On 26 July 2023, a coup d'etat occurred in the Niger Republic when the country's presidential guard detained President Mohamed Bazoum, and Presidential Guard Commander General Abdurrahmani Chani proclaimed himself the leader of a new military junta shortly after confirming the coup a success. This was the fifth military coup d'etat since the country gained independence from France in 1960 and the first since 2010. The coup was condemned by the United States and France and by the West African regional bloc ECOWAS, the latter of which threatened military intervention against the junta, leading to the 2023 Nigerian crisis. West African heads of state on Sunday in Abuja officially recognized the junta in power in Niger, but said their sanctions to reverse the July coup in the country would remain even as they initiate steps for a short period of transition to civilian rule. A team of heads of state would engage with the junta to, quote, agree on a short transition program as against the 3 years the soldiers had earlier proposed. Omar Aliu Toure, president of the regional bloc of ECOWAS Commission, said at the bloc's meeting in the Nigerian capital of Abuja. The recognition of the junta by the 15-member bloc ends hopes of any immediate reinstatement of Nigerian President Mohamed Bazoum, who was deposed amid a surge of coups across West and Central Africa, where there had been 8 military takeovers since 2020. Is Niger a coup leader under General Abdurrahmani Chani favorably disposed to a transition? We'll find out shortly. This is Uyag Mofwegwe welcoming you to Bigtalk on Global Television. I'm joined by my colleague Anthony Mamodu. Together we're going to spend the next quarter of an hour looking at the crisis in Niger following the coup that took place there about 5 months ago. Tony, it's a pleasure to have you on the program as always. Yeah. Again, we're back here talking about Niger Republic, not just as we had known it some 6 months ago, but looking at all of the entire aftermath of the coup. Let's fast forward to efforts being made to ensure that there's a transition to civil rule.
I think at a point, the Nigerian junta was accusing ECOWAS of being too harsh on Niger compared to how they treated the issue of the coup that occurred in Burkina Faso and other African nations. But I think I'm happy that they seem to have come to a compromise. But the issue of 3 years, which the junta did propose, didn't go down with ECOWAS, and they said, okay, we want a shorter term. How short is short now? Would the junta say, okay, if you want us to reduce it, we could probably reduce it for a year, so maybe 2 years or 1 year, but I don't think they can get anything shorter than a year, because it looks like Chomani really wants to taste power and be in charge. And so it's left to see how much time ECOWAS will be willing to give the junta to transit to a new government. But another issue is, would they allow Mohamed Bazoum to return as the president? I think that's going to be a sticking point between the junta and the ECOWAS body and whatever truce they want to reach, because it's obvious the junta does not want Bazoum back as president of Niger Republic, because if he comes back, it's going to defeat the aim of the coup, first of all, and he's going to come after them definitely. And I'm sure they would not want that to play out. So that's going to be a sticky point, because on the part of ECOWAS wants him to be reinstated. That's why they've been pushing for him, for them, first of all, release him unconditionally, then probably restate him back as the president of Niger. So that's going to be, I think, one of the sticking points.
Of course, you and I know, Anthony, that ECOWAS leaders had met in Abuja on Sunday. That was just 3 days ago. When you look over your shoulder now, do you think that meeting of the regional bloc actually has made any difference or will make any difference going forward?
I think the only difference we can take away from the meeting is the fact that, okay, yes, they rejected the 3-year plan and say, okay, we want a shorter time frame for the transition. Then also the fact that they made a pronouncement that going forward, there has to be a standby anti-terrorism force put in place to ensure that, because the excuse they gave was the fact that across the West African region, there were like 8 different coup attempts, and so it means it's something worrisome, and they see it likely to still reoccur somewhere in the future. That's why they are planning to have that anti-terrorism force in place. And the fact that the region is also suffering from insurgency is another worrying factor. And so I think that's another reason why they have to quell this as soon as possible. For the meeting, it still feels like ECOWAS is a bloc that barks but never really bites.
That's sad to note, because one would have thought with the presence of ECOWAS, with all of the machinery in place, whether diplomatic, military and otherwise, this issue of Niger Republic wouldn't have dragged on for this long. But again, we know what the reality is now. But let's talk about something, the development that's also very concerning, the fact that the plotters of this coup in Niger Republic, of course, again, under the leadership of General Abdurrahmani Chani, now reaching out to their counterparts, so to speak, in Mali and Burkina Faso to say, look, let's form some alliance. Is it not possible? That's a pointer to the who knows, the chance that these coupists are not likely going to leave power anytime soon.
It's a very disturbing development, and I think that's one thing ECOWAS has to try to deal with. The fact that they're trying to form an alliance, it's bad news.
Right.
Because we know that for the past few months, on a daily basis, the junta itself has been having daily attacks by some other armed groups in Niger Republic. So it tells you the insecurity in that region is is on the high side. So if fast forward them now forming that alliance, what it technically means is it's going to get to a point where coup might occur in 3 different countries at the same time, and making it very difficult for ECOWAS or the regional bloc to the regional bloc's force to intervene. And because once they form that alliance, the next thing is that they begin to believe that yes, we can actually run this region. And once that mentality gets into their head, I think the West African region is going to be in for a very big trouble. And technically what it means, democracy might suffer. Because once 1, 2, 3 countries know their coup, these soldiers know they can actually hold these countries to ransom, then we might be in for a very big trouble.
The narrative was saying, before now, that we had seen come out of Niger Republic is that citizens, for the most part, on the ground, were very excited, and they were in approval of the coup. Yeah. But that no longer seems to be the reality now, because the implications of the coup are now biting hard on a daily basis, and the average Nigerian can feel that without being told. Does that not mean, if all of this is anything to go by, that Abdurrahman Chani and his other members of his team, as it were, would already be losing popularity as well?
Already we know that his second in command is somehow playing not really on his side. And so that's another big factor. And the issue of the civil servants not being able to be paid, children not able to go back to school, the food of rice, sorghum and other cereals have shot up by 20–30%. And we also know that Nigeria, because of the sanctions that were placed on Niger, a country like Nigeria, who supplies them 17% of the electricity power, cut that short. And so it means they're also suffering in different fronts. And that's why the people are feeling the pinch of the sanctions. That's why at a point, they had to come to ECOWAS to say, we think you're over killing us with these sanctions. So I think it's something, but ECOWAS on its side is saying these sanctions are meant to make the junta have a rethink. But that's not what's happening. What is happening is that the people of Niger are the ones suffering it. They can't go back to school. Workers are not being paid. There are long queues. Basic food like bread and coal, they have to stand on queues before they can get these things for their families to eat. So it's very disturbing, because the worst that will happen is for the people to now revolt against the military. I think that's going to bring further chaos. And for Bazoum, on the flip side, some would say he would rather want that to occur, because when the people go against the military, then he justifies his own reign as the president.
As it stands right now, it will appear from all we have seen, there's no chance, if there ever is, maybe extremely slim, that the international community beyond ECOWAS, especially from the global West, can make any meaningful intervention now? Because, of course, France, for the most part, is out of the picture. The U.S. is not as interested now as they had been in months past. What does that say ultimately about the developments?
I think what he means is that this burden rests on ECOWAS and Niger. Niger doesn't have any choice but to play ball with the ECOWAS bloc, and ECOWAS doesn't have any choice but to do something, because the region is at risk if they allow the junta and the sufferings going on in Niger to continue, especially the fact that they're also even thinking to have an alliance with other coup plotters across the West African region, which is going to spare doom for ECOWAS. And once there's that catastrophe, you know what that is going to mean for the entire African society. For the French, yes, the French felt insulted by Niger asking them to leave. And we know the French government has been very supportive of the Niger country with different forms of aid in education, in health, and infrastructure. So for them to want to come back, it's going to take a very tall order. And if they have to come back, Niger will have to pay a very big price for any intervention to be coming from France. For other European nations, the fact that Niger doesn't have so much of natural resources that is of interest to them, we're not likely to see any help coming from other, European superpowers aside France, because of that colonialism, effect or partnership they had with them before now.
On a final note, just in 2 minutes, quickly, Anthony, the junta had said, look, we are going to try President Mohamed Bazoum for treason. In fact, they called it high treason at the time. Now, on the one hand, we're talking about the possibility of a transition. On the other hand, what happens? Everything else equal, there's a transition. I mean, what happens to President Mohamed Bazoum? Because he's not coming to the picture again as far as the junta is concerned.
I think there are two things we're likely to see. Before that transition happens, there's going to be lots of consultation between the junta and the state actors and stakeholders in the country. There's going to be assurance given to the junta to say, okay, if we're ceding power to the civilians, to democracy, you're going to give us guarantees that we're not going to be, victimized, and Bazoum is not going to come back. There's certain conditions they would definitely give for them to agree to cede power. And for Bazoum, I think the worst that could happen is he coming back and trying to withdraw these military officers. Because if he does that, there are two things. Either he's going to succeed and actually get them down, or there's going to be a revolt somewhere along the way by those military officers who are going to already, there's going to be this plan B by the military, these coup plotters. They are definitely going to have plan B. They are definitely going to still have some of their loyalists within the Nigerian army who will be watching keenly to see what happens. So if peradventure the ECOWAS default on the agreement they have with this junta after they have ceded power, then we might see another coup occur. And at that time, it's going to be bloody. It's not going to just be house arrest. It's going to be like more of a bloody coup, which will spell doom for ECOWAS. And once that trust is broken, Niger may find it really hard to get back on its feet. So it's going to be a very tricky one. ECOWAS as a bloc has to be very careful. The junta also will be very careful because they know the international community is technically against them, and they know that France definitely at that point in time would do anything to hunt them down. Because at that point, once they cede power, it's going to be hard for them to have a hiding place. So they would need all the guarantees they can get from ECOWAS and their own countrymen.
Incidentally, from all you've said so far, Anthony, it's obvious that the junta is walking a tightrope on this one, and it also means that ECOWAS will have to stay up all night for several more nights to come.
Definitely.
Thank you for coming to share all of this insight with us, Anthony Momodu. And that's it on Big Talk, everyone. Thank you for watching. I'm Uyag Mofegbe. We'll see you again real soon.